Some men spend their whole lives waiting for someone to hand them what they deserve. I spent mine laying the foundation in the dark so that when the ground shook, my son would have somewhere solid to stand. Remember that, because everything that follows makes a lot more sense when you know that about me. Welcome to Dad's Cold Justice. Grab your coffee, get comfortable, and remember, the people in these stories had every opportunity to do right by others. They just decided not to drop a comment. Hit that like button and make sure you're subscribed. Trust me, you're going to want to be here for this. It was a Thursday morning in late September, Nashville, Tennessee. The kind of soft southern morning where the air still carries last night's warmth and the sky goes pale gold over the Garria, Cumberland River. I was in my workshop behind the house, on the west side of Brentwood, halfway through restoring an old upright piano I'd hauled out of a church estate sale 2 years earlier when my phone buzzed. Marcus, why is he calling at 9:05 on a Thursday? Boy, supposed to be at his desk at Hartwell. Almost. Marcus, what's up, son? Silence, then breathing, the kind a man does when he's trying everything he has not to fall apart in front of his father. Dad. His voice broke on just that one word, and my whole chest went tight. I'm at Centennial Park. Can you just come? I was already setting down my sandpaper. Don't move. I found him on a bench near the Parthenon replica, the one facing the fountain, where Marcus used to throw pennies when he was 8 years old, except this time he wasn't 8. He was 32, sitting with his shoulders curved in like something heavy had been pressing on him all night, and next to him, a little Cora, 6 years old, pink backpack hugged against her chest, eyes wide and careful. The way children go quiet when they sense the world has tilted, but the adults haven't explained why yet. She had a granola bar in one hand and her grandmother's old Nashville Sounds cap on her head, the one I gave her last birthday. 2 duffel bags sat at Marcus's feet. 2 bags. Lord have mercy. I didn't speak at first. I sat down on the other side of Cora, put my arm around my granddaughter, and I looked at the fountain for exactly 5 seconds. Then I looked at my son. Why aren't you at work? Marcus laughed. It wasn't the kind of laugh that means anything is funny. It was the kind that crawls out when the pain is too heavy for ting. Repeated it flat from Hartwell Logistics. Yeah. The job you've had for 7 years. Yeah. I nodded real slow. Okay, James, steady. And the bags? He looked away, rubbed the side of his jaw, wouldn't meet my eyes. Raymond came by the apartment last night. He'd been having conversations with people at the company. He knows the regional VP. He stopped. He's the one who pushed for it, Dad. He's the reason it happened. The fountain kept running, the morning kept moving, Cora kept eating her granola bar like the world wasn't quietly coming apart. Raymond Calloway, I said, your father-in-law. My former father-in-law. Marcus's jaw went hard. Diana filed this morning. I turned fully toward him. So all of this happened since last night, he told her, his voice dropped to barely above a whisper. He called her after he left our place and told her that if she stayed married to me, he would cut her off entirely. Said our name. He stopped. Swallowed. Said our name wasn't the kind of name that belonged in the place. Lease ever. Calloway family. Drove Raymond's mother to her doctor's appointments. Showed up to every Calloway family gathering, every holiday, every obligation. I rebuilt that man's back deck boards, and all his voice cracked, and he just decided we weren't enough. Like Cora wasn't enough. Cora looked up at the sound of her name. Grandpa, she said with complete seriousness, holding up the granola bar. It's peanut butter. I looked at that little girl, her father's eyes, my mother's stubborn chin, 6 years old and entirely calm because she trusted the people around her to have the situation handled. She's right to trust that sweetheart Grandpa's got it handled. I stood up, slow and deliberate, the way I do when I'm already 3 steps ahead, and the rest of me is just catching up. Grab the bags. Marcus blinked. What, the bags? Marcus, grab them. I reached down and took Cora's hand. We are not solving this on a park bench, Dad. Where are we going? Get in the car. He knew that voice. Every son knows that voice, the one that ends the close conversation. He picked up both bags without another word. We drove south on Charlotte Pike, then caught I-65 heading toward the south side of the city. Marcus kept glancing over, waiting for me to tell him something, waiting for reassurance or anger or anything. Fatherly, I switched on the radio instead. Waylon Jennings. Of course, Dad, you're making me nervous. Good. I checked the mirror. Means you're paying attention. Where are we going? 28 years I kept this close. 28 years of first in, last out, and reinvested margins, and quiet handshake agreements, and not one word to a soul. Not the neighbors, not my brother, not even Marcus's mother, God rest her, not the full picture. Anyway, 28 years of living like a man with nothing because I watched what happened to men the moment people knew what they had. I was not going to let that happen. But Raymond Calloway just made a different kind of mistake. He looked at my son, my blood, and decided we were lesser than he pulled levers. To end Marcus's career, he pressured his own daughter to walk away from her marriage. He sent my grandson to a park with 2 duffel bags on a Thursday. In my city, we came off the highway at Old Hickory Boulevard in Antioch, past the distribution warehouses and the freight yards until I turned onto a long access road leading to a complex that ran nearly 3 city blocks. Marcus sat forward in his seat. The lettering above the main entrance was brushed steel. Simple Professional Meridian Group. Supply Chain and Logistics Solutions, Dad Marcus's voice, had changed entirely. What is this? I parked, killed the engine, sat for just a moment, looking at 28 years of silence made concrete. This, I said, is yours. It has been since before you could drive. I opened the door. We have a vendor review to prepare. He didn't know what that meant yet, but Raymond Calloway was about to find out. If you've been along for the ride and want more stories like this one, it really helps when you hit that like button and subscribe. It genuinely keeps this going. Thank you for real. There is a specific kind of silence that falls over a room the moment someone realizes they have been reading the wrong map their entire life. It doesn't announce itself. It just arrives like the moment after a door closes and you realize you're on the outside. I have lived inside that silence for 28 years. Raymond Calloway was about to walk straight into it. Friday morning, 6:58 I was. Already inside Meridian Group before the loading dock crew. Clocked in. I built that habit in my 30s. Never saw a reason to quit. You want to understand the health of a company. Don't start with the spreadsheets. Watch who's first through the door and last out. I'd been first for 28 years. My office sat on the second floor east corner glass wall looking down over the warehouse floor below. Nothing that announced itself: a desk, 2 chairs, a whiteboard with numbers on it that would have given Raymond Calloway a very long night. I kept one. Photograph on the desk. Marcus, at 11, holding a catfish we pulled out of Percy Priest Lake, laughing so hard his eyes were shut. I looked at that photograph every morning today. It landed different. My logistics director, Diane Okafor, knocked twice and came in at 7:15. Sharp. Diane was sharp, practical, and had been running operations alongside me for 16 years. She could read a room without a word from anyone. She looked at my face, sat down. You need coffee first, or do I just start bracing myself? Pull the Calloway file, I said. Diane's expression didn't change, but her eyes sharpened. Hartwell Logistics, that's the one. She already had her tablet open. They're active coal. Mid-agreement. 14 months remaining on the distribution services contract. They move right around 1.9 million through our network per year. 1.9 million. Raymond Calloway stood at dinner tables talking about his family's thriving logistics business without ever mentioning that the contract, keeping that business healthy, ran directly through my facility. The man called our name unworthy while his invoices were being processed by my accounts team. I almost let myself smile. Almost. I'm not terminating the contract, I said. Diane nodded once. Okay. I'm restructuring the review. I leaned back in my chair, pull every performance clause in the agreement. I want a formal vendor assessment notice drafted. Clean, professional. Nothing aggressive. Notifying Hartwell that Meridian Group is initiating a standard performance review effective today. All disbursements suspended, pending outcome of review. It's in the agreement, page 9, section 3, clause B. I knew because I wrote it. They have 21 days to respond before we make a determination on contract continuation. She nodded the way someone does when they understand that what sounds procedural is anything but, and who's leading the review. I picked up Marcus's photo, set it face up toward me. The new head of vendor relations. Diane was quiet for exactly 2 seconds. We don't currently have that position. We do. As of this morning, he picked up on the second ring, voice thick. He'd slept in his old room for the first time in 10 years. Him and Cora, both Cora curled up in the center of the twin bed with her backpack still looped over one arm like she was ready to move again at any moment. Dad, it's early, barely 7:30, didn't sleep till almost 4. Understandable. How's Cora? A pause. I heard him check. Probably just peered through the doorway still out, he said quietly, his voice going soft, the way it only does when he's watching her sleep. That's because she knows she's safe. I let that sit. You both are. I need you to hear me right now, not as my son, as a man who's about to walk into something that matters. Silence on the line. I need you at Meridian by 9:30 business professional. We're going to tour the floor. Together, meet the team, and then I'm going to sit down with you and show you what I've built and what your piece of it looks like. Going forward, longer silence. Then Dad. What is Meridian Group, son? It's ours. It's been ours for 28 years. I set down my coffee. 9:30. Don't be late. I ended the call before he could ask the next question. Some things a man has to see before they become real. He came through the front entrance at 9:27. I was watching from the production floor. When he walked in, saw him stop just past the lobby doors, look up at the warehouse ceiling. 40 feet of steel beams and racking and forklifts moving in organized lines. 170 employees running with the kind of quiet precision that only comes from years of building real culture. His mouth was open. I'll take it. Diane met him at the entrance, walked him to me when Marcus reached me. He looked like a man trying to do arithmetic that kept giving him answers that were too large. Dad. He looked around, then back at me the whole time. This whole time you drove a 2008 Tacoma still do, Mom knew. I paused. She knew the parts that mattered. She also understood why the rest stayed quiet when people know what you have, Marcus. Everything shifts. The wrong people arrive with the right stories. I started walking, and he fell in beside me. I needed you to build your own life first. You know that everything you became, you built. I wanted that to be yours with no asterisk. The floor workers nodded as we passed a man named George from the freight coordination team. Shook Marcus's hand and said, "You've got your father's walk, son." We ended up in my office. Door closed. Coffee poured 3 folders across the desk. Financials, organizational structure, and the Hartwell Logistics vendor file. Marcus picked up the last one. I watched his face move through it, watched the exact second he found the company name, watched his jaw set. Hartwell Logistics, he said low. That's Raymond's company, yes. And he has been a vendor in this network for 8 years. Marcus set the folder down, looked at me. Raymond Calloway spent 7 years telling his family we weren't worthy of them while his business depended on a contract with your father's company. The room was very still then. Marcus said with a levelness that made me quietly proud. What's in the other folder? A vendor performance review. Notice all payments suspended. Pending assessment. I slid it over. Standard language and who's conducting the review. I pushed the second document across a formal offer letter. Head of vendor relations, Meridian Group. The compensation figure would have made his Hartwell salary look like a starting point. His hands didn't move on the desk. Dad, I don't have experience in anything like this. You rebuilt Raymond's back deck boards by yourself, I said. You drove his mother to her appointments every week. You showed up to 7 years of Callaway dinners and holidays and obligations with nothing but your whole self. I leaned forward. You know how to show up, Marcus. That is the largest part of this job. The rest I will walk you through. He looked at the offer letter for a long time. Go on, son. Pick it up. He picked it up when Raymond sees that review. Notice, he said slowly, he's going to know something shifted. He's going to start calling around. I nodded and eventually I leaned back. He's going to figure out exactly whose building he has been inside for 8 years. Marcus looked at me. And then what? And then I said, he's going to have to call you. The silence after that was the most settled I had felt in 28 years of building. In quiet, Marcus put the letter down, picked up a pen from my desk and signed it. Raymond Calloway's vendor review notice went out at 5:14 that afternoon. By Saturday morning, I had 4 missed calls from a number I absolutely recognized. I let every one of them go to voicemail. He wasn't ready to have that conversation with me, yet he needed to have it with Marcus first. And Marcus, for the first time in 3 days, was sleeping through the night. Marcus was standing when Raymond walked in, not positioned behind the desk, trying to project something. Standing, easy jacket on, the hands relaxed at his sides. The office was calm. Afternoon light coming low through the Nashville haze outside the glass, the warehouse floor running its steady rhythm below the way. It always had like something with a heartbeat that had never once been interrupted. He looked, if I'm being straightforward, like a man who had been in that room his entire life. Raymond stopped just inside the door. The silence ran for about 4 seconds. I counted from the hallway where I stood just past the frame, close enough to catch everything, far enough back to leave my son the space. Marcus Raymond's voice was measured, careful. The voice of someone who walked into a room expecting familiar ground and was already recalculating. Marcus gestured to the chair across from the desk. Raymond, thanks for coming. Have a seat in an office. Raymond Calloway had been funding indirectly for 8 years, without once knowing whose name appeared on the title. I heard the chair settle, heard what came after the particular stillness of two men who had sat across holiday tables and Sunday dinners, now in a room that had entirely different rules. I believe there may have been some confusion. Raymond began smooth practice, the ease of a man who had reframed situations, his whole career about this review notice. We've maintained a consistent partnership with this company for nearly 8 years, and if we walk through the actual performance data, I think the numbers will show that the relationship has been mutually productive. There's no confusion. Marcus said, no heat in it, no sharpness, just the kind of finality that doesn't need volume. Meridian Group conducts standard performance reviews. They're scheduled and procedural. It's written into your contract. Pause. Page 9, section 3, clause B. The silence that followed landed like something set down on concrete. Marcus Raymond's voice dropped lower. Now the softness of a man who has started to feel the floor move beneath him. Look, I recognize that things between our families have become complicated. I'm not dismissing that there are real emotions at play here, but business has its own logic, and I don't think we should allow personal circumstances to interfere with what has otherwise been a productive professional arrangement. You're right, Marcus said. Business does have its own logic. Raymond paused, hadn't expected agreement, which is exactly why I want to handle this with complete professionalism. I heard the quiet movement of a folder crossing a desk. Our team has put together a revised vendor agreement. Marcus continued. Restructured terms, updated pricing, realistic benchmarks, standard clauses, nothing punitive, nothing personal. Raymond was reading it. You could picture it without being in the room. The man in the room, hum and I. Dark jacket, silver at his temples. 8 years of easy assumptions working against him line by line as he moved through a document written by the son he had pushed out of his daughter's life. 72 hours ago. 72 hours, Raymond Calloway had dismantled our world on a Wednesday evening, and by Saturday afternoon the future of his company was sitting in Marcus James's hands in a building that belonged to Walter James. These terms, Raymond started, then stopped. These terms are fair. I know they are, Marcus said. I wrote them. To be more silence. Marcus Raymond's voice was different now. Something underneath the surface that hadn't been there when he arrived. Something slower and heavier, like a man who has been carrying a particular weight for years and can feel his hands starting to give. What I said about your family, about your name. He stopped on it, couldn't push the word out again. I was wrong. I've been wrong about it for longer than I want to admit, I told myself. It was about standards. No, it's all right. I forgive you. I appreciate that. The honest answer of a man who has been wounded and is not going to pretend he hasn't been. The review will follow its process. Marcus continued. Whatever the outcome, professionally, that's what it is. But Cora needs her grandfather, her mother's father. Whatever that relationship looks like from here that lives between you and God and Diana. My throat went tight in the hallway. Not from anger, from recognition, because that was the truest thing Raymond Calloway had said anywhere near me, and he did not know I was standing there to hear it. Marcus didn't fill the silence, didn't offer re-solution or easy peace. He let Raymond sit inside his own honesty for a moment, which honestly was more grace than the man had earned, and more steadiness than most men at 32 could have held. I appreciate that, Marcus said, finally grounded, warm, and nothing that wasn't real. Then I need you to hear something. Raymond, his voice was quiet, the way quiet gets when it actually commands a room, not as a vendor, not as Diana's former husband, as a man. I stopped breathing in the hallway. My father built something real, 28 years quietly. Without needing anyone's acknowledgement or permission, he built it for this family, for this name, for Cora. I could hear the steadiness in it. No shake, no theater, just a man saying what's true. You looked at us and decided we weren't worthy. You made a call that ended my job. You told my wife to choose between her family and her marriage. The room did not move, and Marcus's voice did not waver. even as the weight of every one of those words settled into every corner of that office. And you are now sitting across from me in our building, signing a contract that determines whether your company keeps operating. Nobody spoke. Then Marcus slid something across the desk. A pen. My father taught me that power doesn't need to humiliate. I closed my eyes in the hallway. It only needs to be completely clear. The 8 seconds that followed were the longest in recent memory. Then the quiet, certain sound of a pen on paper. Raymond Calloway signed. The contract Marcus signed after him. Steady, unhurried, the way you sign something you've already made peace with. Nobody said anything else about names or bloodlines or worthiness. Nobody gave a speech. Nobody turned the blade. Nobody raised their voice because none of that was necessary anymore. Every person in that room understood what had just happened. Nobody announced it. They didn't need to. I walked downstairs, not toward the meeting. I never went into that meeting. I walked out through the side entrance, stood next to my 2008 Tacoma in the Meridian parking lot, and looked up at the Nashville sky for a long, quiet minute. 28 years. Not a single day of it was about getting even. Not really. It was about legacy, about building something, with roots deep enough that when the wind finally came for my family, they would have something real to hold on to. I thought about my father handing me $6,000, everything he had saved wrapped in a rubber band, and looking at me with everything he couldn't put into words. I thought about Marcus at 11 laughing over that catfish at Percy Priest Lake, like it was the best moment of his life. I thought about Cora holding up that granola bar, serious and certain, telling me it was peanut butter, like that was the most important thing I needed to know. Raymond Calloway had called our name unworthy. This was our name, a grandfather who built without asking permission, a father who showed up without breaking, a granddaughter who, I didn't yet know what was being held in trust for her, but who would spend her whole life standing inside the evidence of it. There is no title, no contract amount, no family pedigree that touches that. I got in my truck, turned on Waylon Jennings, and drove home from my company through my city, the same way I had driven home for 28 years, quietly and completely undefeated. If you felt something watching this story land the way it did, join us by hitting that like button and subscribing. For more stories that are real, raw, and built around family, share this with someone who needs to hear it. And as always, thank you for being part of this community. I will see you on the next one.